going to give everybody a few minutes to file in, and then we're going to get started. Thanks for joining us today. If you are intending to be at a smarter path to banking growth, how top executives drive targeted results, you are in the right place, and we will get you started in just a minute. Let me just check the boxes here, make sure everything's working. And hello, Mika. Hello, Lori.
Hello.
Hey, James.
And I got my screen all set up here. Excellent. Yeah, we can probably get started. I think there's a Q&A box that's open, so if anybody has any questions, they can pop those in at any time. I know Lori keeps an eye on that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And, additionally, we will have a video recording of this for all attendees, anybody that registered, and we will send that out via email to them. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, and welcome to the fourth in our series, A Smarter Path to Banking Growth. This month, we're tackling the C-suite and discussing how top executives drive targeted results. For those of you who don't know me, I am James Hanson, COO and partner at Current Marketing Solutions. Current is a strategy-first, full-service marketing and branding agency who just happened to be founded by two seasoned experts in the financial services industry. And I'm joined today by my business partner and CEO, Lori Donaldson. Thank you. And our friend, Mika Moser. Mika is founder and CEO at C-Level. Sorry about that. At C-Level is focused on building the next generation of financial leaders and strengthen financial companies through the power of diverse leadership teams. Mika is an experienced C-suite executive with over 25 years of success in strategic planning, leadership, development, brand marketing, and board governance in the banking, technology, and nonprofit industries. As the former president of Bank Director, an educational resource for financial leaders across the country, Mika was instrumental in developing and overseeing the strategic direction of that business. Driven to lead with authenticity, integrity, and curiosity, she believes in the importance of investing in others to set them up and the business for success. Thank you for joining us today, Mika.
Yay, so excited to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Absolutely. Our conversation today is about trying to peel back the layers between high-level leadership and ground-level delivery for financial institutions. So let's get into it. I think maybe we start with a little bit of background. I think a lot of people know what Current Marketing is about, and especially our T3 product, which is a targeted, turnkey targeted and tailored product for financial institutions to grow core deposits and acquire new and grow existing households. But Mika, can you tell us a little bit about at C-Level and kind of what you're doing in the space and how you're helping the leadership side?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So I started at C-Level to really help financial companies, specifically banks, build very strong, high-performing, and diverse leadership teams. I'm very passionate about the next generation of leadership and how it's tied to a great culture. And so today I'm really helping bank executives build up their leadership pipeline. So we do that either through executive search. We'll also do leadership development, group coaching, one-on-one, and also do some succession planning and other sort of talent consulting type services. So been in the banking space 17 plus years, very passionate about the work that I'm doing and being able to help the banking industry move forward by just making sure they got the right people in the right places.
So it
sounds great. Yeah. And I think it's funny because James and I, just to set the scene for everybody, Current Marketing and at C-Level are based in the Nashville area. The three of us have worked somewhere in or around financial services for a very long time. And it surprises me, this is the first time that we've kind of come across each other. In fact, I was telling James earlier today, I was like, we've probably met each other at some point and just didn't remember it. I can't imagine. With your kind of history as director, right, that we wouldn't have met previously. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience and your past in dealing with executives at banks, fee banks, regional banks, all kinds, right, through Bank Director.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I loved about the time that I spent at Bank Director, and again, if you're not familiar with that particular company, they really were hyper-focused on being an information resource for bank CEOs and directors. across the entire country and across all the asset sizes. And a lot of the work that we did was sitting alongside the CEO, listening to what was keeping them up at night, the challenges that they had, and then also really having some strategic conversations in the boardroom about how the board's role in growth and talent and technology was important. And so just we're privileged to have a lot of really great conversations with a lot of great leaders leading some really amazing institutions. And in doing that, what I loved about that work was that I could kind of holistically look at what was happening in the industry, and I could share my perspectives and insights with other people in that same space, and found that to be incredibly helpful for them, incredibly valuable as well. And so that really sort of was one of the reasons that drove me to start at Sea Level. Is talent just kept coming up, is how do I find great people? How do I keep great people? And how do I make sure that I'm getting different perspectives on my team to strengthen up, the pipeline and where we're trying to go. And so one of the things I loved was just or found was that there was probably a way that I could support the industry by helping them address that particular issue. And so that was really kind of the driving force for me to start at Sea Level, which really sort of piggybacked off of the conversations and incredibly, being able to connect with some of these amazing leaders already doing great work and just needing some support in this particular area. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think just on a micro level, it's one of the other things Lori and I have been talking about is when you look at this market that we're in, if you consider Nashville, Davidson, Williamson County, there's this dearth of financial services support companies across the board. And there's so much talent here, maybe not directly in banking, but adjacent to it or supporting the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think of all the companies that have grown up around here. And I wonder, is every market like this? Like, why is Nashville and even Franklin specifically, just in the Cool Springs area, there's like 5 major firms that provide very tangible, either strategic or revenue support for community banks and credit unions. Is there something in the water here? And why Franklin?
Yeah, it's probably deliberate. It's funny, says I remember when different cities were calling themselves sort of the fintech hubs. And so there's different pockets across the country where those support systems are springing up to help those banks, in those areas or regionally in those areas. So I don't know how Nashville ended up, checking that box. But I do know like there were several cities, especially in and around the Southeast, that were hyper focused on being a great support for the financial space. And I think too, what's interesting too about banking, right, is it looks different across the country and just based on the region and the cities. That does have an impact on their growth strategy and their talent pool. And so, different pieces of the country, banks in those areas have a little bit of a different challenge than maybe some other areas. And so it's kind of interesting to see them all kind of holistically and all the interesting and creative ways that they're doing to grow their businesses.
Yeah, that's the other piece of it. Sure. The innovation that's kind of come out of this market is pretty wild too. I mean, going back, 20, 30 years, I mean, an industry, sort of cottage industry that exploded here, and it became, it's what attracted me to move to the market. I mean, I got a job with one of these firms. They moved me down from the Northeast, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned that, kind of looking at leadership trends and understanding what's moving people either in and out of the C-suite or into decision-making in the C-suite. What has changed in the last 6 months or so that you feel like is maybe engineering or re-engineering the approach for how you look at leadership at that level?
Yeah, I would say the last 6 months, I think everybody is, I think right now kind of, we're definitely in a period of uncertainty. And I think everybody is in a little bit of a holding pattern and trying to figure out sort of what's next as far as what talent we need to be focusing on, what our targets are going to be, what do we need to sort of to focus on in the back half of the year. So I think we're definitely kind of in that period right now. I think what's kind of more interesting is looking at whole leadership holistically over the past, call it 5 to 10 years and what's shifted there. Because I have seen, as you kind of mentioned, with the tech hubs coming online, like banking is very much a technology business, and you got to have the right people on the team to help you think about it like that, and to be innovative and to keep up with all the changes. And I think you need the right leaders in order to do that. And I think that's sort of shifting as well. And people are, leaders right now are really looking at how does talent play into that and the importance of that. So I think just from a leadership perspective, what's really interesting that's been changing, over this past several years is just how we're showing up as leaders is a lot different than maybe it was, call it 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I know, we talked a little bit about the fact that we're physically located here in Nashville, but I know, Micah, you travel all over the U.S. helping financial institutions with their leadership training and coaching and recruiting. When you do go there and you're coaching people, whether it's one-on-one or as a group, is there a specific habit or tip you could share with us in terms of helping them reach their professional goals, or maybe even you touch on their personal goals as well while you're there? I'm not sure, but
yeah, absolutely. I think there's all kinds of traits right now that I kind of focus in on with some of the leaders that I work with today, but I kind of lean into the way that I work with these teams is I really lean into sort of the philosophy I have is who we are is how we lead. And, I think a lot of times many of us are twisting ourselves kind of into knots on to be a perceived type of leader, or we have an expectation of what leadership looks like. And so we may find ourselves falling down on the job a little bit. But if we just kind of take a little bit of time to think introspectively, to look at what we're really good at, what we value, how we contribute to the success of the organization, what our philosophy is, and really what we're trying to achieve. If we spend just a little bit of time doing that work, it'd be amazing sort of what unfolds for you and how you can really step into being the best leader for you and for your team. And so I love spending time with these folks trying to kind of dig in and uncover like what makes them a great leader and why do people want to follow them and how do they inspire others and tap into that potential that they maybe haven't seen inside of themselves or even really acknowledged. And so it's kind of the softer side of what I do. There's definitely habits. There's definitely, best practices that, we go through all the time. But I think what brings me the most joy is when I see sort of the person figure out like, aha, this is the kind of leader that I can be and I can be successful at.
Yeah.
That's great.
How much of what you're running into is also tied up into succession planning and then trying to figure out like what's the next iteration of, because when we started Current, we ran into a lot of private family run businesses. And after a while, you start to realize this feels a lot like community banking. So when we got back into the community space, it felt fairly natural. I mean, a lot of our clients kind of operate the same way. But is that a big thing that you're brought in to help kind of understand and smooth out? And how does that typically work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think right now, interestingly enough, the banking industry is going through this period of sort of transformation as far as the leadership pipeline goes. We have this phenomena happening where a lot of the boomers, if you will, the older generations, longtime bankers are retiring at record rates, daily retiring. And the earlier stage career folks in the front end of the pipeline, there's just not enough of them coming in to fill sort of all these opportunities and to find great talent at that end of the pipeline, if you will. And then when you look in the middle, there's the expectations of leadership are so different now, and a lot of them haven't had a lot of leadership development or haven't really been invested in on how to be the best leader. And so you've got effectively a very potentially weak pipeline of leaders. And so I think a lot of banks right now are struggling with how to sort of identify where those gaps are in that leadership pipeline, and then figuring out if I do have some people internally, how do I strengthen them up? What do I strengthen them up in? And then how do I continue to cultivate them to give them opportunities as they arise? So succession planning is a major issue, across the industry. And I think a lot of banks are trying to do some creative things to figure out how to bring in great new talent on the front end, develop the talent that they have in the middle, and then put together a really strategic and thoughtful plan for how to transition those that are retiring out. So there's a lot of pieces and parts to it, which is why it's fun for us to kind of come in and help them puzzle through it and make sure that they're being strategic and intentional about it.
Yeah, that's great. And then next generation of leaders, I think it's going to be interesting to see what they develop in terms of, embracing new technologies, understanding and implementing more thoughtful and strategic marketing initiatives, placing, a lot of emphasis on their culture and their brand. So I definitely think we're going to see a huge shift as we get, as the boomer generation retires and we bring on, whether it's the Gen Xers, millennials, whoever's going to take their place. But I'm curious to see. I'll be very curious to see what happens when that change in leadership happens. And then you definitely could be a very busy person time of transition.
Right. Yes.
But we've even seen it ourselves with, having worked in the industry for such a long time, people that we used to report to, that used to be a part of the executive leadership teams that we worked under, are starting to retire and move on. So it's definitely happening in huge waves. So
Yeah. And as you say that, Lori, the other thing that sort of reminded me of is the type of roles that we're now hiring for banking is a little different than traditionally it has been. We're still going to need our producers, our lenders, our retail bankers, if you will, but we do have a huge push for this data analytics and understanding AI and technologies that maybe those folks in that former generation aren't as equipped to navigate or, not quickly up to speed on. So I think there's a huge opportunity as we look at our teams too, and this is things that we do as well with our clients, is looking at the skill sets that you have and where there are gaps and where you need to fill. And it's not always a traditional banker, quote unquote, role. There was also sort of the new technology type roles. I think analytics, data scientists, AI, prompt engineers, all those fun new titles are very much important into the banking space as well.
Right.
Yeah,
and anybody can be a prompt engineer, right? They just have to.
I want to be chief prompt engineer at our company.
I mean, I would love to. I love feeding ChatGPT all kinds of questions. So.
Right.
Well, to your point, I've been saying for 20 years that bankers in the community bank space and credit union space are not always treating their data with the respect it deserves, not keeping it clean, not managing the intake, and not leveraging it in a consistent way. Do you feel like that's becoming more of a priority with some of the people that you're either running into in this leadership pipeline, or even what the banks are saying they think?
Yeah. I mean, I will dare say most industries are kind of trying to figure out how to get better at data. I think those organizations that understand it's kind of the lifeblood of the organization, it signals what's working, what's not working, where to go, what to do. I think a lot of leaders that I encounter, especially in the banking space, truly do understand the value of that data. I mean, that it's important for driving their strategic growth. I think the real challenge that I have seen is like, how do I get it? Has always been a big one because of all the systems that play in the banking space, very legacy systems that have been around for a very long time. And so a lot of them are like, okay, I know I want this gold, but how do I get it? And is it, what kind of hoops do I have to jump through? I think that is a very real challenge for them. And then I think also the next one is like, okay, now what do I do with it? And how do I use it to tell the story that I need to tell? And not kind of get bogged down in the spreadsheets of it, but actually using it to like really drive decisions and figure out, what it is that we need to be focusing on, and using it more like a dashboard than anything. So the ones I come across really truly do respect that data and that perspective. It's just like, how do we get at it and how do we use it is really where I think they're struggling.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty of service providers on the front end that will help you try to digest and understand, and even some of them do a good job of modeling the data for future use, but then it sort of stops there. Like they do the work and they will give you the file, or they'll help you install something to look at the data, but then good luck, you're on your own. And then, of course, there's thousands of service providers on the other side that are ready to do any sort of deployment for messaging, whether it's direct marketing, digital marketing, whatever you can imagine to use your data. That's why I think when we started putting T3 together, we were like, this kind of connects the flow of clean, good data that everybody knows you need to have, and the richness of data at financial institutions is right. The transaction level data that you can extract, but then using it in a way that gets you next likely product and helps people expand share of wallet, make sure that your card is top of wallet, if you have a debit card or even a credit card. Look into lending to get to the other side of the balance sheet once you've acquired those deposits. And then the gold standard of let's use this data to acquire lookalike households. Yeah. And then we've built this whole engine on the other side that really is designed to deploy that data wrapped in the culture, the brand, the products that the institution has, and try to do it in a way that's not a huge lift for a small organization.
That's right. Yeah.
That
sounds like a beautiful process. So.
Right. The turnkey element, I think, is one of the things that usually turns heads when we start talking about T3.
Yeah.
They want all this, but they also know their resource constraints.
Absolutely.
And where they have to have their focus.
Yeah.
So you mentioned technology. Where do you see the leadership level compliance rules going over the next 18 months or so? Like, has that changed a lot over the last couple of years with either AI or changes in, the CFPB, that their oversight is changing? Like, where do you see that going from your perspective?
Yeah, I don't see any major disruptions or changes with that. I think banking is always going to be a regulated industry. There's going to be somebody that needs to check on that. I think technology is very much infused into the business of banking today. You do need a chief technology officer or a chief information officer or chief innovation officer. Really thinking about the technology and the systems and the platforms that you are integrating into the daily business. And so I don't see any of those going away or changing drastically. And also, I would say, sort of in the C-suite, their role really is to be forward thinking, to be thinking about the strategy, to be able to communicate how technology and data and AI integrates into the business and being able to communicate that to the board. So once you get sort of to that level, you really are kind of tapping into kind of how that is driving the bank forward. And that's, the major focus and the resources that we're going to need to do that. So again, I think they're all very still important roles. I don't see them really shifting that much over the next year and a half.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of C-level positions, what we have found, especially in community banking or the credit union space, there's not a lot of C-level marketing positions, not as many as you find even technology positions or operations. Do you see that changing at all, or do you think it's just going to continue to be kind of an underserved area inside of the bank?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I actually have been kind of philosophically having conversations with myself, because I do that, around the role of the chief marketing officer in this AI-driven space. Mm-hmm. And what does that look like in the future? I'm not at a position to think that CMO will go away. I'm not sure I'm ready to put that stake in the ground. But I do wonder what that role looks like. And I dare say it's going to probably be heavily tied into AI and heavily tied into data and using it to tell the story of how to sort of, where to find customers, how to better serve customers, how to grow. So I do feel like there's still obviously potential, and we need CMOs, especially when you look at branding and all that as well. So yeah, I don't know that I have a strong prediction, but I do kind of see how it's going to transition and change just because of some of the latest technologies that have come online. So it's going to be interesting to see what that role looks like, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
When you philosophize about this, do you feel like marketing is a C-level position? I mean, I've had conversations I've been in interviews with institutions where I was maybe interviewing for a job that was SVP of marketing, and I was like, why isn't this CMO.
Mhm.
There's always some excuse like, oh, we'd have to go to a shareholder vote or we'd have to talk.
Yeah.
But the reality is the perception internally can be a lot different if it's a C and not a VP.
Oh, sure. Yep. Absolutely.
Do you have a perspective on that, or have you run into anything that has informed your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I fully support chief marketing officer and having a C-level role for that. I think because the way I think about marketing is one of the engine drivers of growth. And you have the sales, which is like the accelerator, and then you have the marketing that supports it. And if one voice is at the table and the other voice isn't, then it does become sort of a backseat, you know, a role, and sort of it becomes more about the plans and less about the strategy. And that could be a disservice, because I think if you are able to tap into like the richness of the gold or tap into your brand, that feeds so much of not only customer growth and acquisition, but talent as well. I mean, this is a brand, this is a company that I want to work at. Marketing can play a big role in that as well. So I think their perspective is missed if they're not in the C-suite. And I think that it's important to look at that holistically as it relates to sort of business development and revenue growth, and how marketing supports that. So I think it has potential to impact lots of areas within the bank, and should have a strategic role and a seat at the table.
Yeah. That's how we've always felt as well. Of course, it doesn't always pan out that way. And I think of course, it's been 20 years since I was in a head level marketing position with a bank, inside of a bank. But certainly, your voice is lost when you don't have a seat at the table. And I think some of the sophisticated strategic initiatives that could be implemented that could help drive bank growth, could help drive deposit growth, is lost because the other executives don't maybe understand what marketing means, what marketing can do, and the role marketing can play inside the organization. And so, my experience was, let's have a customer event, and that's marketing. But understanding your customer data and how it tells a story and how you can use it, is completely missed. So that's where, just T3 fills that gap, and helps to leverage the customer data that banks have inside to then inform the growth of the bank into the future. And certainly AI will play a part in that whole process as well. So thank you for your perspective on that. I think that's important for us to understand when we're going out and talking to banks. Like, are they starting to change in terms of their thought process and in their leadership teams?
Yeah. I will say what's also interesting with marketing, especially related with the community banks, the community banks are highly relationship driven. So I can see why naturally they would maybe not put the CMO at that table, because they are so relationship driven, and they have to be to compete. Let's be real. The larger financial institutions are pumping billions of dollars into marketing, and they just don't have those type of resources. But I think that the ones that leverage their relationships and tie it and couple it along with some really strategic marketing efforts that are hyper-focused and targeted and built off of data, I think are finding success and using it to their advantage for sure. Something just to consider as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually music to my ears, because I love to hear your perspective on how the importance of relationships. Relationship building has been critical and key to growing these community banks. However, because they never felt like they could compete, and they can't dollar for dollar with the bigger banks, or as the larger institutions move into town, they just know they can't compete from a marketing perspective. However, that's where we can step in and help fill the gap. We can help them work smarter with the dollars that they do have. Right. So that's where I think we could be a good supplement to the relationship building for community banks, the larger community banks, in terms of utilizing their data and going to market with a very sophisticated offer. So anyways, That's
Yeah.
T3. Selfishly, you played right into that. I didn't even have to tee it up.
You can send me my paycheck afterwards. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right. What do you think is so let's talk about that, not just T3, but that kind of ground level execution. Obviously, strategy happens at the top, but then it's got to be fulfilled in the branches, basically, right? Or if you're lucky and they have a good tech stack on the phone or on the tablet or on the desktop. And when they are delivering at the branch level, whether it's got marketing support, you got sales running, everybody's running on all cylinders. What do you think CFOs are most focused on as a performance KPI in those spaces? Do you see what banks are looking at to try and determine how their growth is proceeding and how the strategy is moving in the right direction? Is it simply cost per account acquired? Is it some other metric? Is it just gross deposit dollars and loan dollars? What do you think they're focused on right now?
Yeah, I can't really speak to the specific metrics, unfortunately, that they're actually looking at. But I can say that I do believe that they are looking at those metrics, and they are looking at metrics that are going to align with the ROI, and if it's actually driving business forward. I do know that that's going to be important. A lot of them do have dashboards that will have those type of numbers that will light up for them. I think they all are very much thinking about, is this the right investment? Can I justify this investment? And is this actually growing us? So yeah, with those, unfortunately, the specific ones, I don't know, but I do know that they do have dashboards for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that return has always been one that return on marketing investment is one that we've always focused on.
Mm-hmm.
But it always seems they look at it in a business case and it feels a little pie in the sky because it's future. But if you show them we can drive $8 million of deposits with this campaign, I mean,
that's a different story, right? Yeah. And being able to tell that story, right.
So it's always interesting. As we're out there talking to community banks and credit unions, trying to understand what are their roadblocks to deposit growth, those kind of things.
Mm.
A lot of times it's a little bit of the mechanics at the branch level, but what we hear is we feel that they're just lacking a cohesive strategy for how they're doing this, whether they don't have their resources aligned to do it right, or there's just not the right message coming from the top. So you end up helping banks kind of develop that concept of, it's not just how do we make sure that succession is right and the C-suite is staffed appropriately, everybody's in the right seat, but also how does that trickle down to the organization? Do you get too?
Yeah, I think that comes definitely under the heading of leadership development. I think, as executives, and when you get into that role, I've been in that role, so I understand intimately sort of the challenges that come with it. When you are putting together a strategy, you work really hard on it. And what we end up doing is we forget to communicate it all the way back down to the line. So sometimes the strategy gets stuck inside of the, boardroom, if you will, and doesn't get translated really well down to the rest of the team. And not only just communicated to the team, but also what their role is in helping move that strategy forward. And that's a couple of extra steps. A lot more communication, and then making sure that everybody is in alignment and everybody understands that is kind of the direction that we're going, and then sharing the wins along the way. So I think what happens is we work really hard on these strategies, and then they kind of don't get disseminated out through the entire team, and why we're choosing to do that, and the importance of it, and the impact that it's going to have on not only our bottom line, but also our team and also our clients. And I think sometimes that message doesn't always get out. And I think we just kind of forget to do that, but recognizing how very, very valuable and important it is. So when I'm working with C-suite executives, we spend a lot of time sort of what are some wins that you can share with the team? How is communication going? Do the people that report to you understand the direction? Are they able to communicate that? And we end up kind of puzzling through some of those just to ensure that we don't lose that, because I think that's really important to the success of these strategies that we're working so hard to develop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things also I was curious about is women bankers, right? Women in banking is the culture that you're seeing in terms of do banks come to you and say, hey, really want to hire some people, but maybe not the same types of people we've always hired? And by that, I mean, different experience levels, different age groups, maybe women, how do you see the culture of banking changing or not changing, maybe?
Yeah, very much so. I do think it is changing. I do think that a lot of the executives that I talk to and the board members in the boardroom as well very much understand and value having different perspectives on the team, different backgrounds, different experiences. That's what drives innovation. That's what drives creative problem solving. That is what type of environment today's young, early stage professionals want to work in. And they're attracted to that. And I think the C-suite and the board is sensing that and feels strongly about that and is working to create those type of cultures where they are getting different perspectives and that they want to make sure that there's opportunity for everybody. So I have seen a shift in that, and I've seen some folks doing really smart, respectful work around making sure that their team is intentional in how they do it. I think, one of the reasons I started at C-level was, the desire was there, the drive was there to do that, to approach their teams that way. And it really became down into how do we do it again? How do we execute it? Much like what you're seeing with the type of banks that you're working with, it's very much the same sort of on the talent side as well. And, we come in and we help say, okay, what type of folks are you looking for? Really from a skill set and an experience level. Get creative about that because the banking pool is a little shallow these days. And so are there other skill sets that we can pull on that are from other industries that can translate? And so we'll just get really creative with them and looking at what they have and what they need. And then being able to go out and tap into some networks that maybe they're not familiar with, just to broaden that talent pool a lot wider than maybe they're currently experiencing. So that's one of the ways that we definitely come in and help is, working alongside them to figure out what is the next right hire and where do we find that person. And those are the fun conversations because you can get very creative and there's just a lot of great talent out there. It's just a matter of finding them.
Mm-hmm. Do you see, speaking of the next generation, kids coming out of college, do you see a lot of movement into financial services or away from it? I don't think anybody goes in their freshman year is like, I can't wait to be a banker. A lot of us ended up there. So do you have any idea what the
No, I don't think they're not chomping at the bit necessarily to become the next banker. But I do know some universities, I've heard anecdotally, some universities are adding a more concentrated effort on banking. I know that some banks are working with their local universities and community colleges to tap into that potential talent. I've said this many times, banking has a PR issue when it comes to hiring the next generation. I just think that they just don't do a good job of explaining why this is important work and that it's so mission driven and that you're actually going to truly make a difference in the community banking space. It's one of the things younger professionals really want to do. They want to work in mission driven organizations, and community banks check that box. And then their banks now are very tech focused. And so I think that checks sort of the other boxes. I want to work on technology or sort of the next, AI or data, one of those type of roles where I can be more valuable and I can use that skill across multiple industries and disciplines. And banking is tech today. So there's those roles as well. So I think we got to get better at sharing that with the early stage career professionals, because I think it will check a lot of the boxes for them and what they are looking for. And there's a lot of opportunities for growth. And I think we just got to do better at telling that story.
Yeah, I agree. Even our intern who we've had for, I guess, two seasons now, I'm changing my degree to finance. And I said, why did you decide to do that? And he was like, I'm worried there won't be any marketing jobs for me when I graduate. And I was like, that's a legitimate concern.
That's a legit concern. Finance is pretty stable.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Well, speaking of which, what was your first job in this industry?
Oh, yeah. So my first job was at a fintech before they called them fintechs. It was a technology software company. They had a fee income software that they developed, and it's now owned by one of the major cores. It was, developed and sold and bought and whatnot. Right. So my first job I thought it was a temporary job. It ended up being a permanent placement. Tells you how naive I was. And I cleaned data, shockingly. AI would laugh at me at how much energy. I mean, I was paid an annual salary to clean up data in Excel records. That was my first job. And it was the data that I was cleaning was lists of bank names and e-contacts and plotting them where they were across the country. So
sales could go then call on them.
Exactly, for our business development teams. And I was cleaning data.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that. Mine was as an originator on the mortgage side. So I needed a job. My sister worked in a bank, and she was like, I can get you and I was I sat in a call center and just waited on inbound calls. Yeah. So it's fun looking back and seeing, where we started.
So. It is funny. Yes, it's so funny.
One day I looked around and I was like, do I work in banking?
I know, right?
Nobody ever imagines or, vision cast that this is where they're going to be. I want to be in banking when you're 20 years old or whatever.
Yeah, you stumble across it and then you're like, wow, this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah, and then
it's not so bad.
It's not so bad.
30, you look around and you're like, I guess I'm in banking now.
I guess I'm in banking.
I've been doing this for 5 years. I guess I'm in banking.
Yeah.
That's probably part of the talent pipeline problem.
It is.
As you said, I think that community focus, that's a big one that community banks don't lean into. Like all these kids, Gen Z and millennials, they want to shop local. And, what do they think is happening when they bust out their Chase credit card shop? They're skimming off the community bank that could be helping them finance that purchase or help them facilitate it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a story there to tell these generations of that are upcoming to consume these products. And the fintech side of it is the fact that banks are not just competing on the phone now, but they're competing with Apple Pay and PayPal and Venmo. Like getting them to realize that that's the reality has always been a bit
their competitive landscape is very different now, and there's a lot of players coming into it, and they've got to navigate it while still being heavily regulated. So it's definitely a threading of the needle.
That's not even bringing up crypto and stable coin and all.
Oh, I know.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But what have you seen? Since we're coming down here to the end of the hour, so let's maybe lighten it up a little bit. How this will go.
I thought I did that with how did you start in banking? So
good, Lori, thanks. But now I want to hear some real stories from the field, or at least from your perspective. Is there a fintech trend or misstep that you've seen community banks take over the last couple of years that you feel like, oh, come on, guys, like everybody saw that coming, or just something that you saw that was, they thought was innovative that was clearly like,
Okay. I will say, early in when the fintechs were coming into the space and there was a call for them to be disrupting banking like tremendously. Our perspective at the time, I was at bank director at the time, and my perspective at the time was that's not really where we were going. I mean, banking is the backbone of the economy. And so to just completely displace it didn't feel like the right prediction to make. And very much knew like it was going to be partnerships. It was going to become how do we support and leverage each other? How do we use the technology that these smart, innovative fintechs are coming up with? How do we incorporate that into the banking services and being able to give our customers a better experience? very much saw like that was where this was going, even though at the time it was hyper, like the media and everybody was just like, banking is dead. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen that headline in my career. And so I knew like it was going to be a little bit of a Wild West, and it had been. And I think now there are some real smart, interesting partnerships and different ways of doing banking where they're really tapping into the products that those fintechs are buying. So I would say that's been interesting to watch that actually truly unfold and to see definitely more of a partnership than there was sort of in the beginning, this adversarial, like us against them type of mentality. So definitely saw that coming and glad that that's how it ended up coming.
Yeah, I think we often, I know Lori and I run into this in our career, the pace of banking, especially when you're in a marketing operation in a bank, can feel like it just, everything just takes.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's because there's this risk aversion that exists I mean, that's the whole basis of the business, right?
Yeah.
Risk aversion. And then you start to realize after you're out of it for a while and you look back, like it's a kind of patience that will weather those kinds of tech disruptions, and like, let's all not freak out. Let's just see where it goes, see how we can integrate it and leverage it, which is the basis of any kind of risk-based business, right?
Yeah. Then that's why they're still around, and that's why they're able to sort of weather those storms, because they will take what they need and they will leverage it and they will use it, as they think about, what's the best and safe way to do that. So,
right. Yeah. Much as it infuriates marketing people.
Exactly. Yeah. And tech people.
Right. And the tech people that
move and break stuff.
I know. I spent 2 years at a tech startup after spending the entirety of my career in banking, and the speed was like whiplash. Yeah. I didn't know what to do with it, or it was crazy. So, marrying those two things together is very interesting. But I think that especially when it comes to fintechs or banks using some of these new technologies to help with customer experience, I think that's critical, because I know we've experienced it as a business owners in a new way than I ever experienced banking as a retail consumer or even as a banker myself. And that's sure, there's the easy button where you can get easy money using some of these other organizations rather than your local community bank, but your fees are going to be higher, your interest rate's going to be higher. So there's a price to pay for easy. Yeah. And, at the end of the day, your community bank and your relationship with your community banker is going to go a long way in helping you set your business up for success. Yeah. And you can do that on the personal side as well. So, somehow they're going to meet in the middle, I'm sure, where community banks and smaller regional banks get better, providing a better experience, a faster experience for their consumer. Both in terms of the technology that they interface with and the speed at which they get approved for loans or accounts. But, I think those two will eventually kind of meet in the middle, but still going to take some time.
Well, I love that you brought that up, Lori, too, because we are all business owners. And so it's interesting when I was kind of in the banking space and in that industry, constantly talking about the small business owners and the opportunities around leveraging tech and how do you market to that group and their experience, even though it's closely aligned to the personal consumer side, there is this sort of group that as small business owners have different needs. And there's a huge opportunity, I think, for banks. And I think they're recognizing that. And now it's interesting being as a small business owner now, it's like, oh, wow, I feel it acutely where there's so much opportunity for the banks to, provide technology and service offerings that will just streamline my accounting processes and how I pay people. And so it's kind of fun seeing some of the tech come online at some of the, my banks that I work with. I won't say who I'm with, but seeing some of the tech come online, and it's kind of like, oh, thank you. Like I needed that. Or like, why don't I have this? I just want to call them and be like, please help me. So
we sent a scathing email to our institution when we started working with them about 2 months in. because I was like, where's all the features on the mobile app? What's going on here? And I'm sure it went into the void, you know?
The online interface on the tech side with the smaller banks is just absolutely sometimes agonizing to deal with, because you know how much better it could be. But I mean, listen, I get it. That costs money.
Yeah, it costs money.
Yeah.
So
Investment.
they make it up. They make it up in value with more, personal relationships with them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Amex isn't sponsoring my little foundations that work.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. They're like, send a form, fill out the form.
It goes into the void too. Yeah.
Right.
Micah, do you have anything exciting, interesting, event-wise, or anything that you're doing coming up in the next couple of months, maybe, that you want people to know about?
Yeah, so I'm excited about some gatherings, some convenings that I'll either be moderating, facilitating, or participating in, and mostly around women in banking. Those always bring me so much joy. So we'll be meeting with a group of bank CEOs who all happen to be women and having a spirited conversation about talent with them. And then also in the early stages of being a part of a conversation with some C-suite women in banking in the fall. And so there's going to be a convening as well for that group. So excited to be a part of those conversations. They really do support the work I do. And I just really enjoy being able to participate, in that way. So excited about those two things that are really coming up for us.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're leading those types of conversations and initiatives, because when we go to these banking events, women in leadership is few and far between, even still to this day. So it's nice to be able to get together like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great space, a community space to support each other and to celebrate, which is what I love doing in those conversations. So.
Absolutely. We don't celebrate enough, do we?
No, we don't. I'm trying to get better at that.
So do you feel, and this is my last question, I promise, before I do the wrap. So,
I feel like that was the last question 5 questions ago.
I know, I'm so sorry. I just keep thinking. And this one will be quick. So community banks, obviously, and regional banks, right? But do you deal with credit unions too, or do you kind of stay out of that space? Are you in there too?
Yeah, we're definitely in there too. I think, I understand the difference in the two types of organizations and how they operate and how they're regulated, and respect that they both are serving very similar services and needs, but the external factors are different in how they do it. So, but at the heart of it, team is across all industries. And so credit unions definitely have a need as well for our services, and happy to work with them, helping them look at their leadership pipeline and developing up their next C-suite executives. So yeah, we do it for financial institutions, credit unions, other businesses as well. I just have a love and affinity for the banking space. And so that's where I spend most of my time these days.
I feel that in my bones. Yeah. I don't know why, but I do.
I know. I don't either, but I do. I do know why. I've met some really incredible
people
bankers, that care deeply about their communities and their teams and their clients. And I just really enjoy being a partner to those type of banks where they bring me in to work with their teams because they value it and are willing to invest in it. And so when I get to meet those CEOs, I just, have a whole new respect for the industry. So I do know why I like it. Yeah.
All righty. Well, Lori, unless you have anything else to add before we wrap it up.
No, I think that's great.
Well, thank you.
No, I've enjoyed the conversation. It was just fun.
This was great, and we do appreciate you, Micah, sitting and talking with us. So I feel like this has been a fun and insightful conversation. Mm-hmm. And we'll provide a recording of this session on our YouTube page, and we'll also send out to any attendees or registrants. If you would like further information on the T3 program, you can visit getuscurrent.com/T3. And you can find us, of course, on LinkedIn at Get Us Current. And you can find Micah at Mika Moser at MIKAMOSER on LinkedIn. And you can see the full breadth of services offered by At Sea Level by visiting atsealevel.com. Thank you both for joining us today, and we really appreciate it, and I'm sure we will talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.